Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about The Winter King Season 1. So The Winter King is a dark retelling of King Arthur. It's dark, it's gritty, and you can find on MGM. It came out in September of this year, 2023. And so right before my subscription of MGM ran out, I'm all like, okay, whatever. I'll check this out. What is this? I have no idea. But I like period pieces and I love swords. So like I checked it out. I'm like, oh, cool. Like King Arthur, you know what I'm saying? I've seen a couple of King Arthur adaptations before and I love them. The 1998 like miniseries Merlin was really good. I don't care what anybody says. I love that live action King Arthur movie with Keira Knightley in it. I love that movie. That was more of a realistic take on like, King Arthur with the Romans and Britain and the Saxons and something like that. Very similar to how this show is. It's very much set in like a more realistic tone. My favorite King Arthur adaptation is Camelot. That show was underrated. It only lasted for one season. I am pissed it got canceled. It has Eva Green in it. And then I saw a mini retelling of that on Once Upon a Time, which just had like the characters and stuff. And so those are really the only like King Arthur stuff I can think of that I've ever seen. I've never seen that old classic Disney movie. And there's another one I saw with Richard Gere, I think it was in it, and Sean Connery. I saw that. That was very different. We had to watch that in school. I remember asking my teacher, isn't he supposed to have Knights the Round Table? Where's Excalibur? Why isn't it magical? Stuff like that. Oh, and also I saw a different retelling on Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, when that King Arthur was evil. And so I've seen many different adaptations before, and I can appreciate them all for what they are. Although I never liked that British television show Merlin. I just can't get into that. I just can't get into that. But anyway, pretty much any adaptation you're going to see of King Arthur is going to be an adaptation and a retelling of it. So I'm always welcome for like a nice little retelling and stuff. And for the most part, when it comes to this show, it's pretty good in everything. It could use a whole lot more action, but this show is not perfect. It's very confusing, to tell you the truth. One of the biggest confusions I have with this show is like who I'm supposed to who is supposed to guide me through this show in terms of the main protagonist. Now, I'll let you know right here and now, I am gonna butcher the crap out of some people's names on this show. I can't pronounce them, and that's just that. And I'm not even gonna bother with the actors and actresses with their names. I'm not here to butcher those, but I'm gonna butcher the characters' names. And if I can't remember their name, I'm just gonna describe what they look like. And that's just gonna be that. All right. And so like I don't know who's supposed to guide me through this show in terms of the main protagonist. Is it supposed to be Arthur himself, or is it supposed to be Derfell, or however you say his name is? Because the show starts off with Arthur, but then it does like a 10-year time jump, and then Arthur's like gone, and it's the other dude. And I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to follow this guy instead and not Arthur. But then Arthur comes back, and then it's like, well, who the heck I'm supposed to follow? Because the show kind of goes on both their journeys and stuff like that. And I'm okay with there being like, because with a TV show, there's always supposed to be main characters, character development, and they all supposed to go on their own little journey. That's totally fine. But I need to know who is my main person. And I have literally no idea. So I guess it's kind of like a co-lead or whatever. And so it becomes confusing with that. Also, what becomes confusing is that a lot of these characters are underdeveloped. You don't really know much about their backstories, if anything. I never really hear too many people's names get name dropped, and I have to keep looking it up. And different characters in this show, like ones that are kind of like main, they go on completely different journeys. This show is very jam-packed in terms of plots and everything. And so one character, they will go through one thing, but then they'll go through something else throughout the middle of the show. Then towards the end, they'll go through like another. And I'm talking about Nimue herself. Like, Nimue is probably the most confusing character in terms of story arcs. Her story is constantly developing, and it would have been better they would have give her character time to breathe and let it develop with multiple seasons. Now, as of the making of this recording, the show has not been canceled, yet it has not been renewed. So who knows? You know what I'm saying? But other than that, the pacing of the story is very fast, and it becomes a bit jumbled at times. And so while watching this, I'm just kind of like, what the heck is this show supposed to be about and everything? And then it's like, oh, okay, it's about Arthur and these other group of kingdom people, and they're supposed to fight the Saxons. All right, fine. But it's like, there's other things in between that kind of muffles it up. Now, what I never knew is that this is actually based off of a trilogy of novels, the Warlord Chronicles and everything. And it was written by Bernard Cromwell. And it's a very dark, retelling, gritty story of King Arthur, of course. Now, something else I did not know, I had to go on Wikipedia to find out, is that this show is loosely based off of Bernard's work. In fact, when you actually read the synopsis of what Bernard characters about and the plots, you're just kind of like, huh, they changed a lot. And I mean, it changed a lot. And after some more research, turns out fans are not happy. And I totally understand that. See, I am an outsider looking in. And so, like, I can understand when their source material is not adapted the way they want it to be. Cause that's how, like, some of the Harry Potter movies were. Legend of the Seeker totally deviated from like its source material. But I enjoyed the television show. I never read the books, but I can understand people's frustration with it and stuff. And I can also understand people's frustration with the Harry Potter movies as they start to differ from that of the books. So I totally understand why people are upset. Now, will this get a second season based on the hardcore fans? I have no idea. The show is pretty dark and gritty, and it has a pretty good approval rating, but it also has mixed reviews. And so while watching this show, I was very intrigued and everything by what's going on, but I started to lose focus because of the lack of character development, progression, and also the overall plot. It just became a bit confusing. Like, take Merlin. I'm all like, oh, okay, Merlin's in this show. Cool. I'm all like, this Merlin needs hair. Like, I don't like short hair Merlin. And I've seen a couple of short hair Merlins and bald Merlins. I've never liked that. Plus, I've always liked the idea of Merlin being older, which turns out when the book version of Merlin, he's a lot older, a bit more, kind of like, I would say more of a lunatic and everything. And this dude is not. This dude is very clean cut and very well mannered. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So Merlin's in this show, but then Merlin completely disappears. Merlin really only appears in the first episode, a little bit of the second, and then he completely disappears for the rest of the series, only to be brought up in very quick flashbacks, and then he's shown at the very end of the series. And I'm just kind of like, dude, this is King Arthur. I love Merlin. And why isn't Merlin in this show? Not only that, but if you're going to cast Merlin as a black man, do something with him. Don't just have him in there for the sake of diversity, only to write him out the show and just have him do his quest on his own. You don't get to see it. Like, that's not what I call real diversity. Speaking of diversity, this show is very diverse. There are like people of color, mainly black. You'll spot an Asian person in this show, but they're always in the background and they never do nothing with those Asian people. There's probably some other races in here, but I just can't decipher out yet. Guinevere has been race bent to black. And my only problem with that is if you're going to have a black actress who's also Miss World White, she's Jamaican and white. if you're gonna have an actress who's mixed with black, why in the world did they dye her hair blonde? It's so distracting, and the actress has natural dark hair, and in most of her projects, she has dark hair. Why not just let her have her dark hair? If you're gonna race bend the character, let her have her natural hair, and don't try to appeal to white people with blonde hair. See, in terms of the diversity and everything, I've only found one person who screamed the word woke as it comes to this series. But for other people I read who are hardcore fans of the series, they keep saying race doesn't matter, but they would have preferred, the characters to be white and only one character to be black, because this is based on realism. My opinion is like this. If you ever watch my channel, you know I could care less about diversity. I love diversity. I want more diversity. However, I also love period pieces. And when it comes, I also love fantasy. And this show is a fantasy / period piece that is based more grounded in realism, because this happens post the war of Rome trying to take over Britain, and with the Britain people fighting with the Saxons, dealing with that of the pagans and the Christians. So it's very much rooted in realism, very much like that one King Arthur movie with Keira Knightley in it. And well, when it comes to race and period pieces, my opinion of it is like this. If it's fantasy, who the heck cares? Because it's fantasy. But when you ground it in realism and people are actually trying to learn, adding other races can be very confusing. And so normally when when I see period pieces and they do decide to race bend, and it's just kind of like, even though those are fictional characters for the most part, when I watch period pieces, I really don't watch period pieces for real people who are in them, but sometimes I do. And so but my thing is kind of if you're trying to learn what this lifestyle was like back in the day, you know what I'm saying? And you have no idea what the life was like back in the day. Well, when you see these Roman shows or the Greek shows or the British shows, and you start seeing pretty much every race of the rainbow in there, it becomes very confusing and people aren't gonna learn what was really like back then. So even as much as I love diversity and I want more diversity in television and movies, when it comes to realistic period piece type dramas or fantasies, sometimes it is best just to leave things the way it was so people can understand, because it becomes extremely confusing when you see these other races roaming around and they have just as much equal rights as the white people, and it was not like that back in the day. And so, but to be fair, the Hercules and Xena show, they did not have real representation. It was a bunch of white people on a show that's supposed to be about Greek and Roman people, but mostly just Greek, and none of those people were Italian. And so then you had other races in there like Mari and other stuff, and Asian people roaming around Greece. And it just became very confusing, but it was not confusing to me at that time because I didn't know nothing about that lifestyle back then. But then it's kind of that is the problem with the entertainment business, is that they never really do really good representation of what things were like back in the day. If you watch any French show or Irish show or Roman show, have you ever noticed they always have British accents and they're always played by white people, and white people of America or Canada or any other country, but it's never the ones from that actual show. When I watch a French show like Rain, I want to hear a French accent, but I'm left with a British accent. And so for the most part, what this show is about King Arthur, the illegitimate son of King Uther and a Pendragon. And so he gets banished from the kingdom. By the way, there's no Camelot in here. And so because of that, he turns into a warlord and he's banished for in the show it says about 8 years or so. In the show, he meets a young boy in a death pit, and his name is Derfel. And so he saves the boy. And so after that, 10 years, about 8 years later and everything, when his father later dies and the kingdom fallens and stuff, they fight bravely. And so, but they're no match for like the enemy, and the enemy whose name I know I'm not gonna be able to pronounce. I don't even know what kingdom they're. I know what kingdom they're from. I just can't pronounce it. And so, like, it starts with an S, but it's not Saxon. And so like they have like these snake symbols and everything. And so Arthur later saves them. Arthur later takes over his father's kingdom so that when his brother Mordred, like, becomes of age, he could take the throne. Only problem is Merlin has, like, seen the child's future. He becomes a bloodthirsty king. And Merlin urges, Arthur to like get rid of this boy and stuff like that. But Arthur is defiant. And the one interesting thing about his Mordred is that he has like a club foot. It's twisted and bent. And so like basically after this, like Arthur tries to like have an alliance with his enemy that ransacked his people's village. This is a hard truce to come by, and because one of the guys who pillaged the village is like the nephew of this king. And so like Arthur is trying to have a truce with this king that he knows is going to be hard. He ends up killing two of like his friends that are like supposed to be knights of the round table from like mythology and stuff like that. And he wants to marry this king's daughter. The king is named, okay, so Godfried, I believe that's how you say his name, King Godfrey of Siluria or something like that. I can't pronounce it. But anyways, he's trying to make an alliance with him, and he's supposed to marry his daughter to unite their two kingdoms. But then he falls in love with Lady Guinevere, who is best friends with the king's daughter. After this betrayal and everything, this pisses off the king, and he wants bloody vengeance to the point where he kills the bishop, and like he's aligned himself with the Saxons. So Arthur has to convince the Saxon king, not to align himself with King Godfrey. And so this is when Guinevere, I believe she offers herself, I believe, to that the Saxons or something like that, to prevent, the Saxons and the Siluria, whatever they call their names, from like, attacking that of Arthur's people and stuff. But the most part, it's a pretty basic story. But like I said, there's a lot of confusion because you have so many characters and so many paths on which they go on. And also this differs from that of the story. So what exactly are the character profiles and some of the people names? And yet I have not mentioned. Well, I'm going to start off actually with this character. Only because in the books, he seems to be one of the main people the books revolves around because he is the one narrating the books. Like I said before, can't pronounce his name, Derfel. He was a young boy who was in like, a death pit. He was saved in the show by Arthur, but in the books, it's somebody completely different. And so in the books, he's the one who narrates the story. He is now a monk and he has converted to Christianity. He used to be pagan. He was also one of Arthur's like most trusted like warriors and stuff like that. And him and Merlin all done went on so many battles and all this other stuff. In the book, in the show, it's not really like that. In the show, he is saved from the death pit. But like he goes to live with like Merlin and all them, and he falls in love with Nimue, which in the books I don't believe he does at all because Nimue is actually the lover of Merlin. But anyways, in the show he is the lover of like Nimue, but she has her own destiny, and being with him cannot be allowed. So it breaks his heart. It also turns out he's friends with this one black farmer. The farmer wants him to take up his land when he leaves and possibly marry his daughter. Now, the daughter does have a crush on the Fell. But the Fell heart is taken by that of Nimue, so he is conflicted by that. Anyways, when King Gondolaeus attacks and everything with his people, they slaughter the crap out of King Uther's people, as Uther has now passed. So I would say Dorell is about 18. The Fell is about 18 in this show. So he doesn't really know how to fight. He's always wanted to be like a warrior, stuff like that. Anyway, their people get slaughtered to death. And Nimue gets sexually assaulted by Gondolaeus. The Fell tries to save her, but then this woman who's in love with Gondolaeus ends up stopping that. And then this is when Nimue gets assaulted. And after seeing that, I was all like, you know what? I really don't want to watch this show no more. I hate seeing people get sexually assaulted. That's one of the reasons why I stopped watching Game of Thrones, because after the first season, I'm like, I don't even want to see this crap no more. And from what I've heard, it happens a lot in Game of Thrones. And so, like, with that, and I just can't get into Game of Thrones. Like, I just can't. This woman, whose name I can't pronounce, has long black hair. Laid ways or something like that. I don't know. She's very underdeveloped in this show. But anyways, she prevents Darrell from killing what's his face. And so like after that, Darrell was gonna get his revenge and stab Darrell, because later on, like earlier on or something like that. See, the reason why Gondolaeus attacked, originally he had a peace treaty with that of I can't talk. I'm getting so confused right now. Okay, Gondolaeus had a peace treaty with that of, like, Uther. And so, like, that never set well with Darrell. And he always wanted to kill what's-his-face, because he's the one who put him on the death pit. And he's the one who killed his mother. So one day he was going to kill Gondolaeus, but then, Nimue stopped him. Well, I wish he never stopped him now. But anyways, so like as they all flee and everything, he takes Nimue and they go on boat across the lake. Now, Nimue is the lady of the lake, but she's not presented like that here in the show. And so she tries to drown herself, but he refuses to let that happen. They later see some of their people scattered, about 24 or so. They try to flee, but then here come Gondolaeus and his people, only for Arthur to save them. The thing about Darrell in this is that he admires Arthur a lot. Arthur's the one who saved him, and he wants nothing more but to fight by that of Arthur's side. And so he later trains and becomes one of, his warriors and stuff. Darrell is conflicted because when Nimue does not want him and everything, she later tries to use him because she knows he's infatuated with her. So she uses his affection to try to poison that of Arthur so he can go to sleep, and so that she can kill Gondolaeus. But Arthur is keen to this and prevents all that from happening. And so then he later goes and starts messing around with that one black girl from that farmer, because the farmer dude died in battle. So after that, he begins seeing like the black girl. The black girl has really nothing to do in the show other than just be his lover. And I hate when they do that to diverse characters, when they just make them the love interest and give them nothing to do. That is not diversity. That is not diversity. This is why people fight for diversity. That is not real diversity. They're just put there just to be a lover and not do nothing. So in a way, like I said before, he fights alongside Arthur, and there's this one dude whose name starts with an O. He's this big guy, screw it. He's a big guy with like a bushy beard, dark hair, and long hair and stuff. I forget his name. I'm gonna call him O. So him and O have like a friendship and stuff like that. And so like they're supposed to collect money from another one of like Uther's like people who's help supposed to protect that of Mordred. But this one dude does not want to pay his taxes. So they go to get the tax money, right? And so the big old dude, he's like, just he tells like I guess like the bishop and everything tells him like, yo, tell them we're gonna be there tomorrow, but they're really gonna be there today and spy on them. And of course what happens, the one dude, the lord dude, like, you know, he just hides the money and stuff, don't want to pay the taxes. This doesn't set well with them, and eventually after a big beef and everything, they get the money. But then the big old dude, for whatever reason, wants to kill some Prince Tristan's like dudes. I forget why. And he tries to blame it on like the Irish and stuff. Darrell, who's a very noble person, does not want to do this. But they do it anyway. And so they slaughter everybody in these mines, but then Darrell leaves this one girl alive by hiding her. Well, when Tristan wants to like get revenge and all this other stuff and tell Arthur what happened, of course, you know, eventually the fell does tell the truth to Arthur, and that causes problem between Arthur and the big old dude. And so Arthur just ends up killing him. And the big old dude is one of the Knights of the Round Table from mythology and stuff. And so this causes the other people to turn on Darrell, which causes Nimue to be all like, ah, you mess with him, you're gonna mess with me, and a curse and blah, blah, stuff like that. Well, his black girlfriend is not happy and excited because Nimue did not help protect her. And so that puts a target on her back. Plus, Darrell, you know, as noble as he is, he's not really, you know, picking which women like he likes. Like he likes both, but he hasn't really picked. He's with one, but his heart is still with another. Also, you know, the stuff he's been doing with some of the other people is not setting well with her, and she decides to leave. So she's written out the show. And so basically, Darrell becomes not necessarily Arthur's right-hand man, but he becomes one of his noble warriors and stuff. And when Darrell was like away, Nimue gets herself in a bit of a heated argument with the Christian people. This causes Arthur to banish her and send her to the Isle of the Dead. So when the fell comes back, he doesn't believe what some of the people are telling him when it comes to Nimue, and he cannot figure out what the heck happens. So Guinevere tells him to dig more into the situation. So when he does some detective work and everything, he realizes that Nimue fought with like this one Christian dude who becomes like the new bishop, Sansun or something like that. And so like basically they believe that she poisoned 3 men and caused them to die because they were Christian and stuff like that, and she's pagan. So, you know, Arthur had her banished. So when Darrell finds out what really, the fell finds out, like, you know, what really caused those men to get sick and die, it turns out there was a dead corpse inside the well. So when they drank the water, they got sick and they died. And so, like, he goes to, like, you know, the Isle of the Dead, and impulsively he just jumps down in the hole to go and find her. It's a long drop. Basically, there's only one way in, and that's to jump through that little hole and everything, that box, because the other entrance is sealed off because it's been bricked off. And so when he's down there, he meets a group of women and little girls. They've been sent there to die as well. There are tons of dead corpses there, bones, and so he's looking for Nimue. But there are cannibals on the other side of like prison. So impulsively he goes, his light goes out, he brings his sword with him. But then when he finds Nimue and everything, they try to escape. And then here comes the cannibal people. He has his sword, but for whatever reason, he doesn't use it. Oh, I forgot to mention, by this time, he now has a mullet. Why? I don't know. Look, it ain't the 80s no more. Mullets are not sweet unless it's on a wrestler. But that mullet gets on my nerves and stuff. In a way, they're saved by Arthur. And that pretty much ends his story because he forgives Arthur. For the most part, when it comes to the show, like I said before, he's a very noble person. And it makes you think the show is supposed to revolve around him because of how, like, after Arthur saves him from the pit, 8 years pass, and instead of focusing on Arthur, we find that of Derfel. And so, like, I assumed the show was going to revolve around him, but it tends to revolve around Arthur a bit more. Now, there is a bit of a confusing point when it comes to Derfel and Gondolaeus and that lady. Gondolaeus stole Derfel's mother's knife and gave it to like his woman and everything. And so, Derfel wants it back. And you think, that knife's going to have some type of significance to it or some kind of power or, something like that. But it's really just nothing. He just wants his mom's knife back. He never uses it for nothing like that. And it makes the character of Gondolaeus' woman even more confusing and the point to where, why is she even in this show? Gondolaeus is the nephew of that of Godfrey, and so he is also a king. By order by that of Godfrey, he raided the village and stuff. But Godfrey just wanted him to attack the village and kidnap that of Mordred. Instead, Gondolaeus just went crazy. He started slaughtering a bunch of people, and then he sexually assaulted Nimue. And then when he asked for baby Mordred, he stabbed the baby, and they showed him stab a baby. They also showed him assault that of Nimue. I did not need to see neither one. They could have alluded to that, Like, they could have, alluded that he assaulted her, and they could have alluded that he killed the baby. They did not have to show that at all. And that baby got stabbed. But it was not really Mordred. It was just somebody else's baby used as a decoy. So they lost their baby and stuff. After that, he pretty much takes over the kingdom with his lady, whose name I cannot even pronounce, starts with an L. But she has long black hair. Anyways, after getting his butt whooped by that of Arthur, he is now Arthur's prisoner. And Arthur is leaving him alive because he knows if he kills him, it will piss off that of Godfrey. And so, but Derfel and Nimue don't see it like that, and they want Gondolaeus dead, which causes problems between Nimue and Arthur, and also a little bit of Derfel. So after that, Arthur, tries to make a peace with that of Godfrey. After that, they are let go. Just like that. And I'm just like, what the world? Now, when you see Gondolaeus and stuff, if you're unfamiliar with the books, you would assume he would be the major big bad dude of the series, and the show will follow him in terms of the big bad. But it doesn't. He's just kind of forgotten about when he's in the prison, and then when he's free, once again, he's kind of just forgotten about, and so is his lady. And so, other than that, he just whines about how he wants this and how he wants that and blah, 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 blah. And all she wants to do is be married to him. But he does want her, but he just wants everybody else. And so there's no real true character development with them or progression. And then when it comes to that whole knife situation, you see that the lady is mortified that Gondolaeus gave, her that dude's dead mother's knife, but there's no resolution to that. And so it's basically, he's just a whiny little nephew who wants this and who wants that and goes around doing all kinds of disgusting and nasty stuff. Merlin is barely in this show. I am very shocked and surprised. Like I said before, he's completely different in the books. Older, more erratic, more unkept. But here he's clean and neat and everything like that. He prophesied by seeing a vision that Mordred will grow up to, be the most ruthless killer of all time when he takes the throne. He tells Arthur, you gotta get rid of this kid and stuff like that, but Arthur does not. After putting a spell on some of the people, which is kind of confusing. It's like, is there sorcery, magic in this show? Is there not? Well, it's very much like the Camelot show, where it's only slight magic. It's not like huge magic like in Harry Potter. So basically, Merlin can see visions into the future. He can put people to sleep by doing the Jedi mind trick with just his hand. And that's about really it. After he fails to like kidnap and kill the boy, like he later finds that of Nimue. Nimue is upset about what happened to her and she is pregnant. He tells her to keep this baby because, if she gives birth to a prince, then that can sway the power of this alliance they need. She defies his orders and she aborts the baby. Now, in the book, she is Merlin's lover, but here, no such thing. More just like her, his apprentice. After that, Merlin, I'm not even joking, he disappears for the rest of this series. After the second episode, he only reappears in the very last, the 10th. He's on some kind of quest or looking for some kind of horn. He's in the ice cave. He has the horn. Blood comes from it. And I have no idea what the heck is going on. Nimue. Nimue is completely different from what she is in like the book and from what I know from her from mythology. She is the lady in the lake. No such thing here. Here, she's just a pagan priestess and very proud of that. She's lover with the fell, and when she is assaulted by that of Gondolaeus, she wants nothing but revenge. He has broken her. She is a shell of her former self, and because of the assault, she says she can no longer hear the voices of the gods, the pagan gods in her head. And so all she wants is death, either death of Gondolaeus or herself. She does no longer want to live, but the Fel will not allow that. So now she just wants revenge on him. She tries to persuade him to make Arthur go to sleep so she can kill him, but no such thing. So she's left for the rest of the series just in agony and with hatred in her heart and stuff like that. She kind of bops around from a couple of episodes, not really doing much. We hear that Merlin saved her back in the day and stuff like that. Other than that, she threatens those other men to leave the Fel alone. Other than that, we don't see him and her get back together, but we can tell that she does care for him. She does cut both their palm of their hands and do some kind of blood, ritual type thing. Now, in the book, she orders him around and he does everything she wants. Here, I'm not sure what the heck that's for. I think it's more just like a bond or something like that, or will he help her or something like that. Kind of like a blood bond or whatever. But then some things kind of go weird with the show. See, in the beginning of the show, you start to feel for her. She was assaulted. She lost her womanhood. She lost the voices in her head, all this other crap. And so you feel bad for her and stuff like that. And then she wants her revenge and cannot get it. And then, of course, she is pregnant. And Merlin literally forces her to have this child, but she refuses. She uses some herbs and she, aborts the baby. And so, you really feel for this character. But then they change all this by adding another subplot between her and that one Christian guy. She hates Christianity because she is a pagan. And so when they start to build their church and everything, she does not like the idea of that. The only reason why they're building it is because Arthur promised they could, even though he kind of feels like he doesn't want them to do it because he knows how the pagans and the Christians don't like each other. This is stuff that happened in real life between the pagans and the Christians. And then of course you have things with the Protestants and the Catholics. So it's always a religious war between them. Well, she does what she does best and she put a curse on them. They don't believe it, but then it starts to rain. So she's like, haha, look what I did. But she doesn't appear to have no powers in the show, but yet she is destined to be the high priestess. Well, she is the high priestess, but she's destined for greater things when it comes to that of the gods. But you never see her have any power. So what the heck? Is it real? Is it not? You know what I'm saying? But 3 men do get sick, and they believe she poisoned them. She will not say if she did or not, just say that this is the will of the gods. And so when the men come there to burn her and everything and take her to justice, they end up setting themselves on fire by mistake. And they say, oh, look at her and her magic. She set me on fire. So, of course, Arthur believes all this. And because she will not say whether or not she poisoned them or not, he banished her to the Isle of the Dead. But like I said before, it turns out the men got sick and died because of the tainted water that she had nothing to do with. And so now she is banished and she's in the Isle of the Dead, a prison where she's supposed to starve to death and die. And so this is when the Fell ends up saving her. Well, Arthur ends up saving both of them because like they're trying to get out the other entrance, which I said was bricked off. So he uses Excalibur to bust through while they're about to be eaten by the cannibals. After this, Arthur apologizes, but she does not want his apology. She wants to go off on her own and say, screw him. But the Fell's all like, like, oh, he loves her, whatever. But Arthur gives her a speech about, look, man, I can't do this without you. I need your help against the Saxons and like Gottfried and stuff like that. And so like she literally tells him, it was the Fell that saved her, not you. But now you're trying to take all like the credit by busting open like the wall and everything. But that little speech of, I can't do this without you causes her to like forgive him, take his hand and go back to their kingdom. It's the whole thing between her versus the Christians, that should have been for a later season. They should have dealt more with her and Gondolaeus and stuff. That was the strongest narrative for her plot. And then the whole Christian thing could have been something completely different. Because then after that, she just seems like a nasty woman and everything after, you felt sympathy for her in the beginning. Then when she forgave Arthur, I would have never forgiven him and I would have went off on my own path. They should just have her leave, do her own thing in the next season, then come back when she feels like she's ready because, she has a higher destiny and everything instead of forgiving what Arthur did to her. Morgan. In mythology, she's known as Morgan Le Fay. Normally in mythology, she is the sister of Arthur. Sometimes they have an ancestral relationship because she uses a glamour spell to pretend to be another woman so she can get a child by him so that her child would be the future king. Normally in mythology, her face is disfigured. Now in the book, she was burnt by a fire in the face, and because of that, she wears a mask. In the show, it's not like that whatsoever. She is still the half-sister of Arthur, and she is not disfigured. And she has no magical powers whatsoever. Also in the book, she is Merlin's apprentice until that of Nimue takes over. In the show, no such thing because she has no type of power whatsoever. She is pagan, and for the most part, she is just like a lady. She's not queen or princess or nothing like that. So she never takes over. But she is very like competent. She's very smart. She's easygoing and she's a very nice person and she gets along very well with Arthur. But they do tend to disagree towards the middle of the show of how to like to rule certain things. For the most part, she is capable of ruling the country, but is not allowed because she is that of a woman. And so, like, she looks over her brother Mordred and stuff, who is supposed to be the future king. Now, in the show, when Guinevere comes around, her and Arthur can't necessarily get along because she can see Guinevere is somewhat of a threat in terms of power and stuff, authoritarian power. And Arthur will listen to his wife more than that of like her. So it causes some conflict. And when Arthur messes up, when it comes to that of Godfried, or whatever his name is, she tries to mend things over against that of Arthur's wishes. She goes with only one, soldier and stuff. And things turn bad when she sees the bishop there. The bishop had enough of Arthur screwing things up, so he lied about where he was going. He really went back to Godfrey's place and tried to negotiate a deal to clean up Arthur's mess, and he was paid a healthy sum. Well, Godfrey, of course, is very vengeful and turned against him. He crucified the bishop and everything, and it was one of the most heart-wrenching things, and the actress gave a great portrayal of her grief and stuff. Everybody in this show does a great job at acting. And so when they leave with his body, they are told by the princess, or the daughter of Godfrey, that he has made a deal with the Saxons. So she goes back and tells Arthur. Later on, after all this, all of a sudden she sees the new bishop baptize people, which she is not happy about. And so he later persuades her and gives her the Bible, which she later reads because she's pagan. And him and her have a discussion about, you can't even see your God, your one true God, but we can see ours and stuff. And so after some persuasion, she is now converted and starts reading the Bible. I liked her character very much early on in the beginning, and even towards the end. But the whole her and the whole Christianity thing, I felt like that should have been saved for another season. Now there's this guy. I don't know his name. And he's I just basically call him a black dude with a mohawk. And he's basically Arthur's ride or die. One of his best friends and a really good warrior. He's also good friends with some other guy whose name I don't know either. Both this guy and the other guy really have no character development. The other guy's just nice and this dude's just a loyal ally. I'm cool that they added a black person, to be his ride or die, but that's all he is. We don't know nothing about him. Nothing. He has no character development throughout the entire show. He's literally just there to be the black best friend. And that does not sit well. Give him a backstory, give him something to do. Just don't have him be the black dude who happens to have a mohawk. Godfrey is a very vengeful king of that one country I cannot pronounce. Or that one part of land I cannot pronounce. In a way, he is the one who ordered his nephew to raid the village and bring back Mordred, not to kill Mordred or whatever. And so no matter what, he was always going to betray them. So he pretends to have an alliance with that of Arthur to get rid of the Saxons. He was gonna oblige by that agreement when Arthur suggests, hey, let me marry your daughter. Well, there's a problem. Arthur became a hoe. And so instead of marrying the daughter, he fell in love with Guinevere. The daughter tried to tell Guinevere, look, man, I'll marry him. I'll get him 4 days out of the week, and you can get him for the other 3, and we can share him and everything. When I heard that, I'm just like, what? Because she knows that if they don't go through with this marriage, her father is going to be extremely vengeful. She tells Arthur that their mother tried to leave her father and stuff. And a couple of days later, the mother ended up dead. And she fears that her father killed her mother. So she tells Arthur to flee, in which he does with Guinevere. This causes the king to be very, very vengeful and take his act of aggression out on the bishop. And later align himself with that of the Saxons, which is, of course, his enemy, but now he's aligned himself with his enemy to take out Arthur and his people. Guinevere. So Guinevere is very different from the book. So when Arthur said he'll marry Godfrey's daughter, I assume, he meant Guinevere, because, I've never read the book. But then we see Guinevere, I'm like, oh, cool, they made Guinevere black, but they gave her blonde hair. Look. If they're going to commit to getting a half-black woman, then go with a black hairstyle. Don't dye it blonde just to appease that white audience and everything. If you go there, you fully go there and you commit. You don't take it back. And so that really bugged me. But she does not show up until the 5th episode. So I'm like, because I didn't even know there was a Guinevere in this show because there's no Lancelot and everything. And so, but it turns out, oh, she's not the daughter of Godfrey. This other girl is. And she's actually that girl's best friend. And also one of her ladies. Now, in the book, Guinevere is a princess to another king and everything. Here, they don't do that. Just like with every Guinevere there is, this one is very headstrong. So, like, Arthur was going to marry the princess girl until he saw Guinevere and became head over heels with her. In the stable room, they end up kissing, but then she later makes them stop. Well, the princess ain't a fool, and she can kind of figure out something's going on with the way they look at each other and the way they dance. So, because of that one kiss, everything got screwed up. And so, like, they have to flee. And when they do, they end up getting married. This Guinevere is very headstrong to the point, like, when, like, there's like a kingdom and the people come to the kingdom to talk to the king. And the king is like, okay, I'll give you this and I'll give you that, but I won't give you this. Like, that. She is very bold and she interrupts the king and, dictates and stuff like that. She's authoritative and everything like that. When Arthur lies to DeFell or whatever his name is, she urges him to keep investigating about what happened to Nimue and stuff. This pisses off Arthur to where they get into a very heated conversation. Anyways, when they have to make an alliance with the Saxons, she offers to give something up. I could not understand what she was saying, either land or herself. Either way, it worked. And Arthur now has to figure out what the heck he's going to have to do. I wish her character was more developed because there's a subplot with her. See, King Godfrey told her before everything went crazy that, you have to get very close to Arthur and go with my daughter and everything, and you have to kill Mordred and stuff like that. And so she's like, I'm trying my best, blah, 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 stuff like that. Well, now things have changed and she actually loves Arthur and married him. But is she going to go through with actually killing Mordred and stuff? That I do not know. So that just leaves us to Arthur himself. This is a very interesting version of Arthur. Every version is a different, interesting version of it. So basically, he is the illegitimate child of Uther, an affair. And so something happens in the beginning of the episode where he's beaten near to death by Uther. I think in battle by fighting the Saxons, his older brother dies or something like that, which pisses off the king. So he's going to kill him and everything until Merlin can save his life and say, just banish him. So Arthur is banished. For 8 years, he's been on his own and banded with a group of men. This Arthur becomes a warlord, but he's not evil like a typical warlord and everything. They fight battles, yes, this and that. And whenever he's bloody, he likes to wash himself off. When Merlin comes to him and say, look, man, your dad's dead, your people are dying, these bad people are coming and doing stuff. He tells Arthur to save them, but Arthur does not. But then later on, he changes his mind and saves them. He saves them by throwing spears at them. This is the first medieval-ish type old school show I've seen where nobody uses bows and arrows or crossbows. Kind of really odd. Anyway. So, this Arthur is very noble. When you look at him and he's a warlord, you think he's going to be evil because he always has an angry look on his face or a disturbed face or a very stern face. And so this is an Arthur who, is a coming of age story. Is he going to be the man he needs to be to lead his people? He's doing a really good job, and you see things like he's willing to help people rake up the hay and all this other stuff. And he's very smart. When he realizes that Nimue really wants to kill Gondolaeus and everything, he knows she's gonna try again, and he knows she's gonna use the Phil, whatever that dude's name is. And he's able to stop all that. And then somehow he realizes, since Merlin really wants to kill Mordred, that he's going to keep trying no matter what. And he stops him from doing that. So he's very highly intelligent, only to screw up when it comes to the whole Guinevere situation. Now, in the book, he's not beaten half to death. This is just for dramatic effect. Look, it's a TV show. You gotta have dramatic effect, people. But when it comes to Mordred, this is a little different. In the book, his older brother is Mordred and dies. And then when the king, the new Mordred, is born, that is his nephew. In the show, instead of it being like, his cousin, it is his legitimate brother and stuff. And like I said before, he has that club foot. It's deformed, and he's supposed to be a bloodthirsty monster when he grows up. Arthur does not believe this whatsoever. And so, like, I already told you when he banished Nimue and everything like that. And so, like, when it comes to Excalibur, it's really interesting in the show. I don't know how Excalibur came to be in the book, but in this version, Nimue is not the lady in the lake. She doesn't give Merlin the sword. He doesn't pull it from stone. But in a way, see, his mom was a blacksmith. And so one day him and his sister are out at the mom's grave and at her workshop, and he's looking for tons of swords, and he finds one that's really interesting. The hilt and the blade part on the handle have turned like corroded blue, and the blade is very rusty. He takes it back and he starts to clean it up, but not fully. The handle is like broken off, and so one day when he has to kill the big old dude, he uses first when he fought Gondolaeus, the sword is magical. So the sword indeed is magical, very powerful. The blade is very powerful though. It can break any other kind of like metal or stone. And so like it's kind of weird that the sword is magical, but not too much other stuff that's supposed to be magical is magical in the show. So anyway, Merlin tells him he got that sword from somewhere, I think from like the other world or something like that, from the gods or something, and gave it to his mother. But the mother never gave it to him for some reason, I forget. Because of this, he becomes kind of disdained towards the sword for whatever reason, and he starts using a regular, normal sword. But then he fights what's-his-face with it, I think. Anyway, at some point in time, halfway into the series, he cleans the sword completely up. He gives it a new handle, he polishes the blade, all the corrosion is off, and now Excalibur is it is. It looks different from the way the book version is. So he ends up killing his father's ally. See, there were 3 people supposed to guard that of the baby when he comes to be. Big old dude with the face paint, and I think Godfrey or whatever. So he ends up killing 2. And so like in the book he screws up as well. He is supposed to marry Godfrey's like daughter, but then ends up marrying Guinevere instead. And so like he always tries to do the right thing, but then he always ends up managing screwing up. That's why the whole Guinevere thing in this show confused me with how smart he is, but then how much he screwed up later on. And so like he has to figure out a way to not have the Saxons align themselves with that of Godfrey's people. So he knows they need 10. So he's going to offer it to them with the help of Tristan and everything, and try to persuade him not to attack their people. Things do not go the way he wants them to. And so that's when Guinevere has to offer herself up as collateral. So now Arthur is determined after, he rescues Nimue and the fellow, what his name is. He now has to figure out what he's going to do with the Saxons and Godfrey and stuff. And so he knows he's going to have to fight both eventually, and he needs to come up with a solution with the help of that of Tristan and that of his people and stuff. I will say this is a very interesting take on just the Arthur mythology. I've seen so many different takes, nothing surprises me. However, the only thing that surprises me with this show is just the utter confusion of where all the story arcs go. Because there's only 10 episodes really. I feel like some plots should have been, for the second season. They try to cram way too much into one season while also leaving off on a cliffhanger to try to get a second season. That's all good and well, but like I said, the problem I'm having with all these short number episodes is that they try to cram too much. And because of that, the story can get a bit muffled and a bit confusing. I don't mind character development, I don't mind character progression, but character development happens throughout a series, not so much throughout an entire season. So I just wish that things were a little bit more clear as to who's supposed to guide the show. Is it like Arthur? Is it the Pharaoh or whatever the heck his name is? And like all these other subplots they give characters. I wish those subplots would have been for other seasons. And also, I wish they would have established him falling in love a little bit harder with that of Guinevere. It kind of just happens. I know it's always love at first sight, but it'd be nice to build up to it. Not just in her first appearance, him just falling madly in love with her for whatever reason and just wanting to fall in love with her and stuff like that. They should have really built up that romance, and they should have had her appear a lot sooner and stuff. And like I said before, yeah, I can understand why people are upset at the source material not being adapted faithfully and stuff like that. But people are forgetting one thing. When things adapt something, they rarely go page by page of the source material and stuff like that. However, in the last couple of years, we've been gifted with having source material honored and everything. So that is where some of the confusion can come with some people, because we're on this path in Hollywood where people are respecting the source material and delivering the best they can, only for some people to go back and basically just do and tell the kind of story they want to tell. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.